All right, and we are live. Check, check, 1, 2. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. We are going to take some moments to discuss what we just witnessed in a pretty significant boxing card. Riyadh season took place in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. It featured David Benavidez more or less steamrolling Anthony Yarde, Devin Haney dropping and outclassing Brian Norman Jr., Bam Rodriguez just looking spectacular, dominating and stopping Puma Martinez. And we had Abdullah Mason and Sam Noakes going to war, and Abdullah Mason coming out on top, becoming the new WBO lightweight champion. This was a good night of fights. I feel like for the most part, they delivered. There were some big surprises, some great moments. And let's see, I want to make sure that we're audible right now. How are we sounding? Check 1, check 2. Okay. So yeah, this was, I thought, a really, really compelling night of fights. But like I said, there were some big surprises. Benjamin Tucker is in the house. Check 1, 2. What is good? Give me a heads up, I guess, once the game start. I know the Rams don't play until like 5:15, 5:20. They've got the evening game. But yeah, this was a lot of fun, really. And okay, I would say that the fight of the night, and let me know if you disagree, the fight of the night for me was Abdullah Mason. I was going to say Anthony Mason, former New York Knick. Abdullah Mason versus Sam Noakes. And if you were Sam Noakes' corner, after the head clash that caused the cut and Abdullah Mason hurting Noakes visibly in that it was the second or third round, would you have pulled him from the fight saying that he can't see out of that eye that got cut? Not to encourage people taking like the easy way out, but we often go back to Tim Tszyu's first fight against Sebastian Fundora, and we look at his corner as having made a big, big mistake. Should that corner have pulled Sam Noakes from that fight after that cut? Now, I get that he's probably trained his whole life for this moment, for a world title shot. And he did battle back and made it a competitive fight. Again, I thought that it might have been fight of the night, but given what you had seen in that I think it was the second round where he got hurt to the body, he kind of recoiled into the ropes and he got buzzed up top. He was in all kinds of trouble. And that happened shortly after he got cut right over the eye from that head clash. Like, it wasn't a punch. Once it was established that it was a head clash, should Noakes' corner have just bailed at that point and hopefully maybe reschedule it down the line? Because again, Noakes battled back, but in that moment, I was thinking, this isn't going to get any better for Noakes, judging by the way it's going in this second or third round. Maybe he should try to make this a no contest, get out of there, come back, and hopefully don't get cut by a clash of heads. Well, they didn't do that. Noakes fought on, ended up being a tremendous fight, really. Like, it told us a lot about, I mean, his chin looked fine to me. Abdullah Mason's, I thought his chin looked fine. And he showed that he's got guts. He could get in the trenches. They just both went to work, and Abdullah Mason simply did the better and more effective work. But this was a good fight, and I think it does a lot for Sam Noakes' stock as well. I don't know if he's going to get another title opportunity. It depends on how much of himself he left in that ring against Abdullah Mason, because he did ultimately take a beating and he did have to gut it out. But man, that was a very competitive fight, and it did check a lot of boxes and answered a lot of questions that we might have had for the 21-year-old Abdullah Mason. Fantastic stuff. Let's see. QT is in the house. Noakes is a dog. Boxing fan, thank you for coming through. Huge opportunity to pull him by not. He can gain grace with the ring. Yeah, by continuing to fight. So maybe it was the right decision to fight on. I'm just thinking strictly from a wins-loss. What is your best chance of winning and what is your best chance of not losing scenario? Like, if he felt that the cut was not bad to the point where it would impact his performance going forward in that fight, then okay, stay with it. But if it is bleeding into your eye and you are having trouble and you are hurt, because remember, right after he got cut, moments after he got cut, he got hurt badly. So again, just that mix of scenarios made it to where I was thinking maybe they want to pull Noakes. But I mean, as a fan, I'm glad that they didn't. It resulted in a really good fight. Let's see. What was more impressive than Tio fighting Loma? Devin beating Norris, I think. They were similar ages when they took on those respective challenges. Linares. So you're at Devin beating Linares versus Tio fighting Loma. For me, I thought that Tio fighting Loma was way crazier. Like, even if you look at the odds, Tio was a big underdog against Loma, even though I know that you thought that because of Tio's attributes, he would have a chance against Loma, a good chance. But with Linares, Devin Haney was a big favorite there. It was a step up, but Haney's been taking on big challenges along the way. Linares, like Jojo Diaz, was one where it's like, maybe this guy could present some danger and it's a step up, but Haney should be able to handle his business. So yeah, let's get right into the stuff. Let's go right into Devin Haney versus Brian Norman Jr. because if the fight of the night, again, for me, was Abdullah Mason versus Sam Noakes, the moment of the night was Devin Haney dropping Brian Norman Jr. in that second round. You want to talk about just moments where you're just jumping out of your seat, like what the hell is going on? Like, you could have envisioned any different scenario. And to be fair, some of you guys in my comments for the preview of Haney versus Norman said Haney by stoppage, and props to you. He didn't get the stoppage, but he was dangerous and he did obviously hurt Norman. But the idea of Haney blasting Norman that early in the fight and almost getting him out of there in the second round, I think that blew us all away. Especially after the kind of like tit for tat first round where there was a lot of tension because you felt that something could happen at any moment. And we all wanted to see if Haney, like Abdullah Mason, was ready for war, right? After what we saw with him against Ryan Garcia, and then what we saw, the head scratcher that we saw between him and Jose Ramirez, it's like, oh, where are we, Haney? Like, okay, like, what you got? Like, what was that, So in the first round, I thought that Norman looked like he was throwing the snappier punches. Haney didn't throw a meaningful punch for like what seemed like the first half of the first round. Then you saw him hit Norman with the jab, but then you saw Norman really hit, rock Haney's head back with the jab. So I'm thinking, oh boy, like if Norman's even competitive in the jab battle, Haney might be in real trouble, is what I was thinking late in the first round. So then we go into the second round and then we got what we got. They actually exchanged hooks at the same time. Like if you look at the replay, they both released their hooks. They both tried to keep that right hand up. And if you look at the replay, you can see that Haney ate a hook as he gave a hook. So, which is a crazy thing about boxing. Sometimes you have to just put your face out in the line of fire and kind of sacrifice your face in order to land a good shot. Haney did that. Again, they both had their right hands up, but Haney's hook, they were, gunslingers in that moment. Haney's hook is the one that connected, which is interesting because it was Norman who was reputed to have the great left hook, but Haney's was the one that landed. You saw Norman buckle, and he was so buzzed by that shot. He tried to keep a poker face like boxers always do, but you saw Norman have his hands up like this, and Haney threw another left hook, which was pretty much blocked, but then he threw that right hand, threaded the needle between the guard, and he pretty much had a free shot damn near with that right hand because of how buzzed Norman was with his hands kind of like this. And he was dazed. He wasn't in any position to pull back, to slip, to parry, to move. Norman was just kind of like, And so Haney threw that right hand right in the middle, dropped him, destroyed his nose. You saw when he got up, his nose had that S shape to the bone, which is never a good thing. And you saw him by the end of the round walking back to his corner, face a bloody mask, and you're just thinking, damn, Haney just busted his no less. Which again, did any of us expect that by the second round? So yeah, moment of the night was clearly what Haney did to Norman. That was that was something. And, you know, to Norman's credit, showed a ton of heart. I mean, imagine having to clear those cobwebs. You get hit, first you get blasted by a left hook. And you say what you want about Haney's power. These guys are like professional punchers, throwing hard punches. And again, that right hand was pretty much unguarded. So he ate a clean shot up the middle with that right, got knocked down, nose busted. And then he's got to fight on against somebody who's able to land a jab seemingly at will. So Haney, look, this wasn't a dominant performance. It was a great performance. To me, it's one of Haney's greatest performances. It wasn't a dominant performance. I don't like to overuse the word dominate, right? But I would say that the first half of the fight after the first round, so rounds 2 through 6, or 2 through 5, 2 through 6, nearly dominant first half of the fight for Devin Haney. And then it got more competitive. Benji and I were talking about it through text. We think that Norman slowly recovered and was able to make things more competitive. But one thing that I wonder about Haney, because he's able to land that jab at will, I just wonder sometimes, why doesn't he dispense of it with even more regularity? He's clearly effective with it. And say what you want about a jab, and do you realize that nobody just walks through jabs unbothered? Nobody, even these tough guys who are in the ring, nobody likes to get hit by clean jabs, especially when you've got a great jabber like Haney. That's why people reset, recalibrate, they stop getting aggressive. You saw Floyd Mayweather make a career out of guys trying to enter the pocket in the first couple rounds. By the midway point, they're like, I'm good, you good, I'm good. It's because nobody likes getting splashed by these jabs, especially when you saw Brian Norman's, messed up nose and Haney being able to, again, land it with some regularity. Let me get into some of what you guys are saying. Let's see. Boxing Wave is in the house. One of my favorite boxing channels, if not my favorite. Yeah, welcome and thank you. Heck yeah. And by the way, if you want to see a great reaction, check it. I was watching this fight at my brother's, and when I was driving home, knowing what that moment of the night with Haney dropping Norman, I'm like, let me go see Boxing Wave's live chat and see that moment and see how he was calling that second round before the knockdown. First of all, how did he call the first round? Because again, there was a lot of tension, that ominous feeling that something could happen at any moment. Because again, we're all seeing is Devin Haney built to code right now? Is he ready for war, right? And then you get into the second round, and I just wanted to see Boxing Wave's reaction to the moment where Norman, again, they both threw that hook at the same time, and then you seeing Norman buckle and then seeing Haney drop him with that right. It's worth a watch. Go check that out. Yeah, Haney shined. Haney definitely shined. And there's often so much hatred towards Devin Haney. There's no euphemism. No way to sugarcoat that. People, for whatever reason, many people don't like Devin Haney, and they clown his game. They talk about his power and this and that. Can we all just agree that he takes, in terms of your strength of schedule, he's one of the most bouted fighters when it comes to, yeah, I'll take on that challenge. I'll take on that challenge. And I don't want to have to go down the list, but just look through his career, going out to Melbourne twice in what was at the time nearly a 50-50 fight with Kambosos. And he dominated Kambosos so badly, in, again, a nearly 50-50 fight. We didn't know how good or not good Kambosos really was at the time. We just know that he had those close fights with Bay and, and upset Tio, right? So Haney has to go out to Melbourne and then ends up having to go twice, but he dominated so much in that first fight where we didn't know how that was going to go, that if you look at the betting odds in the second fight, then they were super lopsided. So that's how much perceptions changed because of one great Devin Haney performance over George Kambosos. So at the time, it was risky business, him going out to Melbourne to fight their hometown hero. And then he defended against, Lomachenko. He went up to fight Prograis in his 140 debut. He fought one of the most dangerous punchers in Ryan Garcia, made it through that fight, got dropped 3 times, but I always thought that there was some moral victory to him not getting stopped in what was overturned and became a no contest, but he endured that fight, made it out, and he almost won it. Like, those scorecards were close. He was winning a lot of those rounds in between getting dropped. So making Brian Norman Jr. probably the most dangerous, perceived to be the most dangerous guy at welterweight at the time, your 147 debut, and then performing like that, you can do nothing but tip your hat to Devin Haney. Like, really, like, what else does he have to do? And really, he's still in his 20s, but he's already knocking on the door of the Hall of Fame. He might not be there yet, but look at his resume. Like, he is getting very, very close. He's already a 3-division champion, 1-time undisputed champion. And I truly do believe that not all undisputed is the same. If you beat one guy to capture 3 or 4 belts versus having to beat that guy, then that guy, then that guy, capturing one here, one there, it's not the same thing. Sometimes you got another fighter who did the heavy lifting to gather the belts, and then one guy knocked that guy off and collect them all. So I am respectful of that as well. But yeah, Devin Haney, he needed to come up big in this one. This was a fight where if it didn't go his way, this could have been career shattering for Devin Haney. So I don't want to downplay the threat level here. And whatever story is written down the line about whatever Brian Norman becomes or doesn't become, always remember that going into this fight, it was dead even in the betting odds. And that was only more recently. A few days ago, Brian Norman was a slight favorite. It was close to dead even. Norman was a slight favorite, but it was pretty much evened out by the time they enter the ring. So yeah, super high threat level. And again, Devin Haney shined. No, it wasn't a very fun second half of the fight. It did kind of hit a simmering pace, but Devin Haney was still doing work, and he was more or less still controlling the action. I gave Brian Norman maybe 3 rounds in that fight, but it was a clear win for Devin Haney, plus the knockdown, plus busting his in the second round. Yeah, Devin Haney never looked healthier either. So yeah, he's a problem. He is an absolute problem. I want to get into this David Benavidez versus Anthony Yarde, because there were some surprises here as well. Let me get to what some of you guys are saying. Boxing fan said, yeah, Haney's guard was on the job. Spectacular defender. Isn't it interesting? And hot facts for Robert Reeves. This is my boy from back in the day. We go back 20-something years. I'm talking high school years. Thank you for coming through. And check out his channel as well. Isn't it interesting that sometimes you could get 2 fighters that are the same height with the same reach? And because of one guy's footwork, which Devin Haney had the superior footwork, and that might have been the biggest separator between the two. But because of the footwork and skill level, guys that are about the same height, same size, same reach, with about the same hand speed, look like one guy has like a 2-inch height advantage, reach advantage over the other guy. That's how much footwork and skills matter, because they entered the ring looking the same size, but as the fight commenced, Haney started looking like the slightly bigger guy because of how he was boxing. It's really quite an interesting dynamic when you look at it through that type of a lens. Let's see. QT said Norman was drunk until about the 7th and 8th. Yeah, it took him a while to recover. And I think, yeah, that's why it started to even out a little bit more at that point, where it became, the rounds became more competitive and Norman even won a couple, maybe. Is because it seemed like it took multiple rounds for him to get right again. And I'm still not sure if he was ever 100% for the rest of that fight. And I saw he called it a flash knockdown. It's like, that was anything but a flash knockdown. Again, I thought that Haney pretty much got a free shot with that right hand because of how buzzed Norman was when he was here after eating that hook. Benji said, was Norman's nose broken? I don't know if it was officially called broken, but it looked broken. Again, it had that S shape. And I remember when I was driving home, again, I saw Boxing Waves commentary and he was saying, like, his nose is broken. Is it just me or is his nose? And I remember thinking the same thing as I'm watching the fight. I'm like, I'm telling my brother, like, look at Norman's nose. Like, what's wrong with Norman's nose? Like, he's messed up. And then you see him walking back to his corner and you just see the splattering of blood all around the lower half of his face. So it's like, yeah, that nose got badly damaged. So I would imagine, like, if that's not a broken nose, show me a broken nose. I mean, it does get worse, I guess, but it looked broken to me. Boxing Wave said, once I realized Devin wasn't moving like the Ramirez fight in the first round, I knew Devin was confident. Yeah, he was not running. He was holding his ground, more or less in the center of the ring, standing his ground, if anything, backing Brian Norman Jr. up, and just boxing effectively without being evasive. This was, like you call, like, if Devin Haney needs to fight kind of a combination of how he's fought against Prograis and how he fought against Ramirez. I think that we saw even less of what he did against Ramirez, and he was really more or less right there, like throughout the fight. Yeah. Yeah, Devin Haney does not duck smoke. And again, people can like him, dislike him for whatever reasons, but in terms of, he is everything that you actually want. Minus the spectacular power, he's everything that you want in a boxing competitor, right? Don't you want all of your fighters to say, sure, yeah, let's do it, bring it? Like, don't you want that out of your fighters? Even in fighting Ryan Garcia, who is not super accomplished in terms of his actual resume. He's made more money than most fighters ever will, for sure. And he's fought some of the greatest, some of the best, most talented, fought Tank, he stopped Oscar Duarte, which might be his most impressive outing, stopping Oscar Duarte. But fighting Ryan Garcia, I think gives you a lot of credit as well. It turned out to be a cheating, overweight Garcia, right? Purposely overweight. But he's one of the most dangerous punchers, I would say, in and around that division. So even that fight, Haney should get props for taking and getting in there. Let's see. Legendary SS Jackson, thanks for coming through. Looks like Haney stopped the bow and arrow jab. He either stopped it or at least didn't pay for not stopping it, right? Because, him kind of pulling back here was what, supposedly, and, you look at channels like Boxing Gems, and you see him kind of pull that guard back, which leaves his chin vulnerable. But again, I need to rewatch that exchange of hooks, and I need to see why, even though they pulled the trigger at the same time, why it was Haney's that landed. And, and Haney, you can see in the replay, Haney got hit by the hook as he was throwing that hook. Why was it Haney's that splashed on Norman's and Norman's hook, with Norman being reputed as being the guy with the more dangerous hook? Why his didn't land in the way that Haney's landed? I feel like that one exchange should be studied. Or was it just a 50-50, just a jump ball, just a 50-50 play? Could that one truly have gone either way? Or was there something that Devin Haney did that heightened his chances of being the guy to properly land the left hook in that exchange? Legendary SS Jackson said Haney established range better earlier. Perhaps, but I thought that in the first round, Haney landed a couple significant jabs, but I thought the most significant jabs in that first round were Norman's that snapped Haney's head back. That was my observation from that first round. Let's see. QT said Devin benefits from strategic matchmaking, but I think this punches his ticket to the Hall of Fame. More of an indictment of the boxing era than anything. But, but you look at Devin Haney's resume, who he's fought: Lomachenko, Ryan Garcia, Regis Prograis, Jose Ramirez, a faded Jose Ramirez for sure, but Jose Ramirez, and now Brian Norman Jr. He's racking up some meaningful, very meaningful opponents. So strategic matchmaking, Bill Haney did have some interesting things to say after the fight about, Brian Norman and his dad not getting out there early enough to get acclimated, and that his dad made a strategic blunder, basically, which I was thinking, damn, Bill, like, in saying that, you're kind of at the same time taking a little bit of credit away from your son in that instance. I get that you and your dad and you and Brian Norman Jr.'s dad have your own thing going on, but you just made it about you guys in preparing your sons. And in doing so, you made it sound like that was as significant as anything that your son did in the ring. That's how I read some of Bill Haney's comments. Wasn't my favorite. Yeah, and Haney has been trying to call out Tank Davis and get some of the baddest in the ring with him, including Teofimo Lopez. Remember, they were trying to make that fight just now, and Teo said, no, I will rather not, for whatever reason. Turkey was trying to make that happen. So yeah, if you don't like Devin, don't let it be for his lack of appetite for smoke. But yeah, strategic matchmaking, that's another conversation. I think that there are strategies, but I think that what they do is they look at fighters and they start strategizing. Isn't that what you want to do as a team when you're kind of like when you're plotting, okay, who are we going to take next? What are their vulnerabilities? How can we exploit those vulnerabilities and so forth? That's just that's good coaching. That really is just good coaching. And I don't think that they would not fight certain guys because they don't want to have to go through the rigor of developing a game plan to strategize against that guy. Otherwise, I don't think Haney would be trying to call out the Tank Davises and fighting Ryan Garcia and trying to fight Teofimo Lopez. There's some dangerous guys out there, and it doesn't seem like Devin Haney is trying to avoid them. Let's see. Let's talk a little Benavidez versus Anthony Yarde. I was surprised that Benavidez steamrolled Yarde. It was almost as if, yes, the first 1 or 2 rounds were a little bit interesting, and you wondered, is this going to be a problem for David Benavidez? But it seemed abundantly clear early in that fight that Benavidez was not going to respect Anthony Yarde's power, even early, which was I'm like, okay, David, like, be careful there. And, Anthony Yarde was more or less Anthony Yarde, the one that we've seen. I didn't see like any deterioration, any slip. It's just that, and somebody who had commented on my preview on that fight said Anthony Yarde's going to be getting hit with more shots than he's ever been hit with. And that did happen. But David Benavidez from the jump seemed very confident that he was going to absolutely drown Anthony Yarde, didn't he? Like, he just seemed like he was sure that Anthony Yarde could not keep up with the pace, with the volume. And he was right. He stopped Yarde in the 7th round. That's 1 round earlier than Benavidez stopped Anthony Yarde. So look, I wouldn't say I was critical of David Benavidez's first 2 performances at light heavyweight, but I did note that he didn't stop either Gvozdyk. And this is a post-prime Gvozdyk. This is not the Gvozdyk that fought Artur Beterbiev in the title unification fight several years ago. This was a Gvozdyk who was on a comeback trail after like 3 years of retirement. Benavidez didn't stop him, and he didn't stop David Morrell, which we still don't know truly who David Morrell is. We saw him struggle and arguably lose to Katayev after losing to David Benavidez. And even before that, he didn't look good in his win over Hot Rod Kalajdzic. So David Morrell, to me, hasn't been super impressive in any of his 3 light heavyweight fights. So with those 2 David Benavidez performances at light heavyweight, I'm like, I still don't know if David Benavidez is a top tier light heavyweight. Like, to me, Callum Smith, for instance, was more proven at light heavyweight than David Benavidez. And remember, there was a time where Callum Smith, David Benavidez, and Zurdo Ramirez all held belts at the same time down at 168. But Callum Smith, in beating Joshua Buatsi and knocking out Lenin Castillo and so forth, more proven at light heavyweight. So we enter Benavidez versus Yarde. I'm like, can Benavidez handle the punches from the heaviest handed fighter he's ever been in the ring with in any division? This is by far the hardest puncher Benavidez has fought. It looked like it did not matter in the slightest. Let's see. You know what? Let me get to a couple of these. I'm gonna make just one more note about Benavidez, and then I want to get right back to some of what you're saying because I see some good points in here as well. Serge J 007, thank you for coming through. JK Beta, thank you for coming through. So David Benavidez truly lived up to the name, the Mexican Monster. He was that was a savage performance, and I'm just wondering, how is somebody? I mean, we've talked about his build for years now, right? He doesn't look like somebody who would be an elite athlete, just body wise, but endurance wise and activity wise, have we seen anything like this at light heavyweight with effective punching plus the volume plus the underrated defense? Like, David Benavidez was drowning Anthony Yarde by like the 3rd, 4th round. And at that point, you're just wondering how much more, well, 2 questions. Is Yarde going to be able to pull a rabbit out of his hat and somehow buzz? Because he had to hurt David Benavidez in order for this thing to like last. He had to hurt Benavidez. That really didn't happen. He landed some clean shots. Benavidez took it really, really well. And Not only that, but he would take it and then just say, all right. And then he would want to jump right back in and start mixing it up. Again, he didn't respect Anthony Yarde's power. He just knew that him being willing to take 1 to 2 shots to give 4 to 6 to 8 shots was going to be worth it and was going to deter and discourage Anthony Yarde. And it did just that. But by the way, what the hell was that at the end of, what was it, the 4th or 5th round, where David Benavidez has Anthony Yarde's head kind of like in a collar, and he's holding Anthony Yarde, and he starts unleashing like a dozen punches high and low, just unanswered for like the last 6 seconds of the round. Like, did the ref not see it? It's not like the ref was at an angle where he couldn't see that David Benavidez was clearly holding Anthony Yarde here and hitting him like this. And some of them were blocked, sure, but Anthony Yarde was just turtled up like this. The ref is standing there looking at this, and I'm like, me and my brother are like, what the hell's going on? And the ref, if anything, looked like he was about to jump in and stop the fight. And by the way, there were a couple weird endings to some of those rounds. One of them, I didn't hear a closing bell, yet I see the trainers coming up, putting the stools in the corner. I'm like, is the round even over? Like, I didn't hear anything. And the fighters evidently didn't hear anything. The ref had to then jump in and say, go back to your corners, and the fighters looked confused. So there was that. But yeah, at the end of the round, with Benavidez going here, they took away a point away from Benavidez later on when he hit Yarde after knocking him down, which it should have been on the ref, I thought, to step in. Because if you're punching the guy, you don't really know if he's crouched over leaning against the ropes or if his knee is on the canvas. So if you're the fighter, I say keep throwing punches until the ref jumps in and rules it a knockdown. To me, that was on the ref. This ref just seemed like he made a couple weird blunders. So there was that one where he then took the point away from Benavidez, and I'm thinking, okay, you're going to take a point away. Thank goodness they didn't disqualify him like they disqualified Roy Jones against Montel Griffin back in the day. Roy Jones first and for a long time only lost by DQ. But again, I still don't know what to make out of the end of that one round with all those unanswered punches with an illegal hold that the ref looked like he was thinking about stopping the fight and calling it a TKO. But then it was the end of the round. And so again, like nothing was really done about that. And there was no real discussion about how did the ref just let that happen? So yeah, that was just a little bit puzzling. But by then I thought that Anthony Yarde's heart more or less was out of it. He was at that point pretty much just running on adrenaline and pride at that point. But it wasn't a matter of if, it was when. And man, the closing hook that shook Anthony Yarde up and almost toppled him, that was the perfect time for the ref to then just jump in and wave the fight off, which he did, kinda. He made the decision to jump in after he saw how cleanly that last hook landed. But as he was about to jump in, he then pulled out and pulled back and let David Benavidez get one more hook in, and then he jumped in. Almost like, I'm not about to get hit by this next hook. So it's almost like he pulled out, said, do what you got to do real quick, David, and then I'm going to jump in. Almost like better you than me. It was the body language that I saw from the ref. And then he jumped in and waved it off. But it was almost like he was going to jump in. Then he saw Benavidez loading up for another hook, and he's like, maybe I should just wait. Let me not run this red light here. Let me let this car go zipping by. And then I'm gonna take my green. And then he waved it off. Self-preservation, but damn, you're the ref. You gotta protect the fighter. And if you thought that it should have been stopped after that clean left hook, you gotta throw your body in there. But yeah, easy for me to say. But nonetheless, spectacular performance for David Benavidez. Like that to me told me, yes, he is an absolute monster at 175 as well. He's got a really good chin. And his gas tank, his energy level it's just unreal. It is really unreal. Like you started feeling kind of bad for Anthony Yarde because you see what he's trying to do. He's trying to move. And even when he was having some success in the first couple of rounds, he wasn't winning the rounds. I didn't think he wasn't winning the rounds. And then it only got worse over time from there. And I've never seen Anthony Yarde in a fight where he was never really even in the fight. Because In this fight, he was never really in the fight. He had a Hail Mary puncher's chance, and that was really about it. He was never really in the fight. Speaking of never in the fight, Fernando Martinez, Puma Martinez versus Bam Rodriguez. Puma was never really in that fight. Can we agree on that? Like, to me, Bam was brilliant, and damn, his defense is so good. Just those little subtle slips. There were so many punches of Pumas that were just whiffing by, catching nothing but air as Bam is ducking, slipping, footwork. Like, his feet are so good. He would be at the side, like on the side of Puma, letting a shot go. Puma's looking this way and getting hit from this way. Pretty much like we saw Manny Pacquiao drop Miguel Cotto and Shane Mosley, where Pacquiao's feet are so good, he's able to punch, sidestep, punch again before the fighter can even react to the change of angles. Bam Rodriguez is phenomenal. And this fight is what, to me, reminded me of Manny Pacquiao, I don't know if y'all remember this, versus David Diaz. While Pacquiao was jumping weight classes on his way to fighting Oscar De La Hoya. In fact, I think Oscar De La Hoya might have been his very next fight. But after having the trilogy with Eric Morales, the 2 fights against Barrera, the first 2 fights against Marquez, he had one fight. He, being Pacquiao, had one career fight at lightweight, and it was against David Diaz. And he just obliterated Diaz for as long as that fight lasted. It went into the later rounds, like 8, 9, but David Diaz was never in that fight. And David Diaz was a champ at lightweight at the time. To me, Puma Martinez being a champ and just the level of domination that you saw from Bam. You started in the Pacquiao versus Diaz fight, you saw all of the tools that Pacquiao had been refining over the years, and then under the tutelage of Freddie Roach. You saw everything that made Pacquiao shine. You saw all of those tools at work against the totally outmatched David Diaz. In Bam versus Puma, and by the way, Pacquiao ended up getting a devastating knockout against Diaz in that fight. With Bam versus Puma, you saw all the tools that make Bam Rodriguez in this, on display against Puma, and he got the highlight knockout at the end of that destruction. Just, again, not too much more you could say than a brilliant performance for Bam Rodriguez. I don't know where he goes next. I mean, he's at a point where he's kind of lapping the competition. You know what I mean? I mean, you could go and track down the remaining belts, become undisputed in that division, and then see what you could do at bantamweight 118. I'm less sure about him ever really being able to fight Inoue, unless Inoue gets old, because that's 2 divisions up. Not to say that he can't do it, and I've seen crazier things, but let's be realistic and take this division by division and respect each opponent in each division on your way to going up to 122 eventually. But yeah, Bam Rodriguez is lapping the competition in and around his weight class right now. Let me get to some of what you guys are saying. Let's see. Legendary SS Jackson is saying that Anthony Yarde should have said bye to Tunde Ajayi years ago. Perhaps. Like, have you seen a lot of development and a lot of improvement in Anthony Yarde's overall boxing skills and game? To me, the Anthony Yarde that was building up to fight Kovalev and then fought Kovalev is more or less the same Anthony Yarde, I think, that we've got today. And that can't be a great thing, right? Let's see. Too many arm punches and not enough sitting down on punches from Yarde. I thought he whipped a couple punches, but some of them did look a little bit mechanical and did look a little bit like he wasn't putting his hips into it. But I mean, Yarde is a hard puncher, and he's demonstrated that over the years. It's just that his punches really didn't seem to matter too much against David Benavidez. And again, based on what Benavidez was giving back, look, I still think Yarde is a harder puncher than Benavidez per punch, but that stops mattering when you are eating 6 punches to every one that you're landing. You know what I mean? GW GWKON YouTube. Thank you for coming through. He said, I love Abdullah Mason's offense, but his head was always open to the line to get countered. Noakes had really good inside fighting, so it was perfect matchmaking for sure. Shout out to both guys, but especially Mason. Yeah, that was, again, I thought that was the fight of the night. Abdullah Mason. I keep on wanting to say Anthony Mason, former New York Knick, but Abdullah Mason versus Sam Noakes. And again, a lot of what we wanted to see if Abdullah Mason had chin, had durability. Abdullah Mason had never been beyond the 6th round in his career, and he did that in a 12-rounder in a major step up fight against a good opponent in Sam Noakes. JK Beta said, I think Yarde's guard was keeping Benavidez's hands there more so than Benavidez actively holding him. Really? Because I thought Yarde's guard was here, and it looked like Benavidez had his glove wrapped around the back of Yarde's head/neck while he was holding him in place and letting his other hand go repeatedly. That's what it looked like to me. Let's see. But yeah, Bam was perfect. Yeah, Bam was pretty damn perfect. I will agree to that. He fights like he was made in the lab. He's almost like the perfect boxer for that division. QT said, I don't care about the Zordo versus Benavidez fight. I need to see David versus Bivol. Here's what I think about David Benavidez versus Bivol, Beterbiev, Zordo, and so forth. First of all, I was kind of like, when David Benavidez announced that he'd be going to cruiserweight to fight Zordo. And not that David versus Zordo wouldn't be a good fight. Again, they were both belt holders at the same time at 168 back in the day. But it was because I don't think that if David Benavidez goes to 200 cruiserweight, that he could ever really make it back down to 175 light heavyweight. I don't know that that his body will allow him to do that, especially as he gets older. He's now going to be, he's in his late 20s now. So, and there's also this, Zordo just announced that he's got a fight coming up in January. So Zordo is going to be fighting, let me give you the name in just a sec, Robin Safar. He's going to be fighting him on January 16, according to Mike Coppinger, and that's going to be in Palm Desert, California. I might want to go out to that. It's a couple hours, but it's going to be paired with Alexis Rocha versus Raul Curiel. So Zordo's got a fight in January. My question remains, why the hell doesn't Zordo just fight Jai Opetaia? I mean, there could be an obvious answer. He doesn't want to. Maybe. But to me, the cruiserweight division is just begging for that fight. Jai Opetaia is so good. Zordo Ramirez has done a lot in multiple divisions now. That, to me, that's the relevant fight that needs to be made. David Benavidez making his cruiserweight debut against Zordo. I mean, okay, I don't hate the fight. It's a good fight, good matchup and everything. And it's a fight that Zordo might win. It's a competitive fight. But I just really wanted to see David Benavidez, less so actually against Dimitri Bivol, because I feel more confident that Bivol beats Benavidez than I do that Beterbiev beats Benavidez. To me, Benavidez versus Beterbiev, or should I say Beterbiev versus Benavidez, is guaranteed fireworks because of their styles. And with Beterbiev being in his early 40s now, and Benavidez now is showing what he can do at light heavyweight, and he's still in his late 20s, to me, that could result in a stoppage of Beterbiev. Like, that is possible. That is on the table. It could also be perhaps a stoppage of, with Beterbiev stopping Benavidez. Like, there is no outcome, including decisions on either side, that's possible in that one. Whereas I feel like Bivol versus Benavidez results in Bivol winning by decision. I just have so much respect for Bivol's footwork, really. And I feel like that could look a little bit like, Haney versus Norman would be a bad analogy, but it could look like a fight that Bivol demonstrates that he's a level above Benavidez, and it's going to be through his footwork, his boxing ability, and so forth. I feel more confident that Bivol beats Benavidez than knowing what the hell happens if Beterbiev fights Benavidez. So for that reason, I would rather see Benavidez versus Beterbiev than versus Bivol. But it looks like we're going to, as soon as Bivol gets healed up and they make the third fight, we're probably going to get Bivol versus Beterbiev 3. Let's see. I'm going to get to some of what you're saying. But yeah, I was kind of a little bit bummed when David Benavidez announced that he wanted to go up and fight Zordo, or that they had a deal already made for, like, I think May, Cinco de Mayo weekend in May. Because again, I want to see David Benavidez continue to do work at light heavyweight. That just seems to be where he belongs right now. Do you think Boxing Wiz 1, thank you for coming through. Do you think David Benavidez deserved to get the 2 points taken? He got 2 points taken in the Yarde fight? I just saw the 1 point taken for punching after the knockdown, which again, I thought that was on the ref for not jumping in. Tell me where the second point was taken from. I didn't catch that. Let's see. Bam has a skill set. GW Con YouTube said Bam has a skill set of a pound for pound #1 fighter. I'd have to stop and think to name any flaws in his style. Bam is golden right now. Bam is absolutely golden right now. Like, you know, I was semi-certain when he was beating the older guys, Srisaket Sor Rungvisai and Carlos Cuadras. When he dropped Cuadras with the sidestep, and Cuadras looked like he was surrounded by Bam when Bam hits him from the side and Cuadras gets dropped. Like, that was the first real moment that I'm like, damn, Bam is good. But yeah, he's just looking like he's clicking on all cylinders right now. Legendary SS Jackson said Mason screwed the parlay up early by throwing single shots all night. Yeah, he wasn't putting a ton of combos together, but he was getting in the mix and doing work, going to the body, digging with uppercuts. I mean, that ended up being a very grueling fight. Legendary SS Jackson said, even in the exchanges, you could see Benavidez has more mustard on his shots purely because he was always throwing with the hips. Yarde trying to be slick before perfecting the basics is an unfortunate path. Yeah, he's always seemed like he was kind of like the, you know, I could roll away from this one. You know, you can't touch me. I'm moving around the ring, and let me just find my opportunities to pick you off, with almost a little bit early Andre Berto-ish. You know what I mean? A little Berto-ish. And forgive me if you heard, because I might have heard that one somewhere, that comparison. I'm not sure if I was watching, because I recently watched Berto versus Victor, not Virgil, but Victor Ortiz. Great fight. Rewatch that when you get a chance. But yeah, just like, you know, liking to sneak in the uppercut, throwing the wicked like left hook, and kind of being a little bit evasive, but still not a great defender, but looking like you think that you're slick and think that you're elusive. Yeah, Yarde's got some of that. None of that worked or mattered against David Benavidez. This is a top 2-ish performance for me for David Benavidez. Like, if you want to see what the monster is about, not the monster in a way, but the Mexican monster is about, we'll just want to see Monster 101 class, go look at Benavidez versus Anthony Yarde. That tells you why David Benavidez is such a nightmare. Let's see. GW Con YouTube said, if Bivol versus David happens, maybe not with the Zordo fight, do you think David can pin Bivol on the ropes and not let him regroup to the center of the ring and reset? Canelo and Beterbiev couldn't make that. I don't think that Benavidez could do it. He might have more success than Canelo. I don't know if he has more success than Beterbiev. That's really tough to say. But again, Bivol's footwork, and the thing is, it's not just footwork. It's his ability. It's his like level changing. So he's got a 3-dimensional game. What I mean by that is, some people are good at pulling back, but they don't have a lot of side to side. Some people can change levels, but don't pull back as well. Bivol's game is forward, back, side, up, down. So he's doing a little bit of everything. Usyk is like that as well. Like, he could go here, he could go here, and he could go here. And so when you have to consider all that, you could pin somebody, but if that person is hitting you more accurately because they have more certainty on where your head's gonna be and where your body's gonna be than you have of where their head's gonna be, then it's not as easy to pin the guy down because there's a risk to that. And you start trying to cut the ring off, you're the one who starts getting your head snapped back in your pursuit of this more elusive opponent. So I wouldn't think that Benavidez can pin Bivol on the ropes and just go to work on him. Like, Bivol to me is kind of special in that regard. Let's see. Serge J 007 said Mason versus Noakes reminded me of Raging Bull. That's a De Niro movie about LaMotta. Legendary SS Jackson says slow feet won't eat most of the time. Yeah. Bruce Wayne 32. Do you still think Canelo beat? Do I still think Canelo beat Benavidez, or do I think he would beat Benavidez? Look, back in the day, I thought that Canelo, and I've thought that Canelo was ducking Benavidez this whole time, right? Even as Canelo was ducking Benavidez, I was thinking it's interesting that he's ducking Benavidez because Canelo might beat Benavidez. But the more I think about it, especially maybe Canelo in 2021, when Benavidez was fighting Romer Alexis Angulo and Kyron Davis and Ronald Ellis, up to Benavidez fighting David Lemieux, when David Lemieux went up to fight Benavidez. That period where Canelo was also storming the gates and beat Callum Smith, Avni Yildirim, Billy Joe Saunders, Caleb Plant, 2020, 2021, where Benavidez lost his title on the scale just before that. Canelo, to me, might have had a decent shot at beating Benavidez, but Canelo's work rate simply, to me, won't be able to hang with Benavidez, especially in the second half of the fight. Like, in the first couple rounds, Canelo might be the sharper between the two. He might win 2 out of the first 3 rounds, maybe even 3 out of the first 5 rounds. Good head movement, slick boxer, good power. Benavidez has to respect the power. But as time has gone on, and I've seen what Benavidez did to Demetrius Andrade, Caleb Plant, and then you start seeing the tapering off in Canelo's overall game a little bit. I don't think that Canelo gets stopped by Benavidez simply because Canelo is one of the most durable fighters I've ever seen. And I say that because he went 24 rounds against near prime Triple G without getting dropped once. I don't think Benavidez stops Canelo. I mean, maybe now, like if Canelo went up to light heavy right now to fight Benavidez, maybe he gets stopped. I don't know. But I don't think Canelo beats Benavidez right now or even a year ago. I think that Benavidez wins probably by decision, and it's because Canelo simply can't match that pace. And there will be a time where Benavidez stops respecting Canelo's power. Then what happens? Then Canelo starts to get worked over. Remember when Canelo started to get beaten up by Bivol, where by the 5th round, you see Canelo leaned up against the ropes, waving Bivol in. And that was just a sign to me that Canelo was tired, was confused, didn't know how to land effectively against Bivol. So what are you going to do? Try to get him to like burn some energy, get him to come in. Maybe you could come off the ropes and counter. Canelo was a little bit lost there. I think you would see a lot of that, but only worse because of Benavidez's willingness and eagerness to drown his opponent. Yes, it leaves him a little bit more vulnerable, so he could get caught with more clean shots from Canelo than Bivol did, but I'm still taking Benavidez. Again, probably by decision. Let's see. Oh, so Boxing Wiz said that they took 2 points away from David Benavidez because of that. Okay, which is sort of crazy, but yeah, 2 points, not 1. 2 points. If you looked up the point deduction, multiple sources say 2 points instead of 1. Interesting. Okay, so if he wanted to call the foul on the clean punch after the knockdown, again, I would protest that by saying that the ref should have been the one to drop in, because again, when you see the way that Yarde was kind of leaning against the ropes, it wasn't even clear to me that Yarde was down, like his knee was on the canvas. And as you're the guy throwing the punches and you see the guy start to lean, if the guy's not like on his back or on his face or like isn't clearly knocked down where you like hit the guy and he falls back onto his butt in the middle of the ring and it's clear that he's down, sometimes against the ropes, it's tough to tell. And you're so just trained to let the punches go until the ref tells you to stop, right? that to me was on the ref because of the ambiguity and the lack of clarity in, is he down? Is he down? Okay, I guess he's down. You know, and it wasn't like he was down, clearly down, and then David Benavidez just hit him with another shot. It was all within the flow of Anthony Yarde being on his way to kind of going down as he's leaning against the ropes and then taking the knee, you know? So, but okay, so if the ref wants to call it a foul, he decided to call it a foul. If you're going to do that, yeah, I guess it has to be 2 points because you've seen guys get disqualified for doing that. What was the other one? It was like after the round. It was the Lewis Crocker fight, right? Patty Donovan, Lewis Crocker, something like that happened in that fight. So in that, with that context, I'm not too mad at the 2 point takeaway. If you do decide to call that a foul, 2 points, because it's a clean shot for a guy who's already trying to recover because he's down. But again, I thought the ref should have done better and been more clear in jumping in and saying he's down. Let's see. FC, thank you for coming through. And I always appreciate your insights in your comments as well. Thank you. I completely disagree with you on the disinterest over Benavidez Ramirez fight. Who's really interested in that fight when we have other great? Oh, you completely agree. My bad. I read disagree. You said I completely agree with the disinterest. See, I saw the dis in the disinterest and I said disagree. You agree in the disinterest. Yeah, there's still unfinished business for David Benavidez at light heavyweight, bottom line. So it's like, why jump another division when there's so much fun to be had here, you know? I'd want to see David Benavidez versus Callum Smith. Benjamin Tucker, Benji, my cousin, said, I wouldn't mind seeing Beterbiev versus Benavidez. Yeah, that's the one I really want to see. Matt Sadio, thank you for coming through. From what I saw, Mason loses to Murataya. Yeah, I don't know if Abdullah Mason is ready for the true cream of the crop. I mean, he's still 21 years old, and Sam Noakes is not like a top 10 guy in the division. But if this was an appropriate matchup. Should it have been for a title? You could argue maybe not, but I've seen titles given to less worthy guys, but these weren't guys who people thought were the best in the division right now, fighting for a vacant belt. And I think that there are probably a couple non-champions, non-belt holders at lightweight that might be able to beat one or both Abdullah Mason and Sam Noakes, So this was a really good fight, but yeah, Abdullah Mason, when I saw him coming up as a prospect, I thought that he was kind of separating, I thought that he was blindingly fast. I have to kind of recalibrate. He's quick, but he's not shockingly quick. He's not Gary Russell Jr. in there. You know what I mean? So, but he's got a Terrence Crawford level reach. He gave some of that up against Sam Noakes. He doesn't have the greatest defense. So yeah, there is some vulnerability there. When and where will we see Keyshawn Davis? I think at 140, when? Who knows? Maybe when Top Rank lands a home somewhere, or if Keyshawn Davis is willing to, or not, like who isn't willing to, work with Turkey. I mean, I guess a couple fighters aren't, but maybe when Turkey steps in and says, I want Keyshawn Davis to fight this guy or that guy, but I'm pretty sure it's at 140, unless Keyshawn Davis surprises us and goes to 147. And it really depends on when, but I assume that we'll see Keyshawn Davis hopefully in the first half of 2026. But man, you want to talk about somebody who had all the momentum in the world to things kind of being at a standstill. Yeah. So Keyshawn Davis at 140, where is some deep waters over there for sure. But yeah, I just wanted to give some initial takeaways on this Riyadh season card. One thing that I'll add before we go, the crowds in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Now, I wanted to say more about this, but then my brother who I was watching the fights with was like, keep in mind, it's 4:20 in the morning over there. You know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, I guess there is that. You see either Eddie Hearn or Turki Al-Sheikh, like they're drinking like coffee and tea and stuff, trying to stay awake. So, and they're doing that to appease Western Europe and the United States, viewership wise. So they wanted to make this fight viewable to the biggest boxing audiences, basically. So that's why they made it so tough. But you just wonder sometimes how that impacts the fighter's ability to perform, when you're entering the ring at 2:30 in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, stuff like that. So I'll give the Saudi crowd a break, but often in these Saudi arenas, it's not as raucous as a fight in the UK. Think O2 Arena, think Tottenham, think Ben versus Eubank style fights. Like those crowds are absolutely, think Michael Conlon versus Lee Wood, and just think about Sweet Caroline and what you get in those British boxing crowds, some of the best, right? This is not that when you get these Riyadh season cards in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. It's largely because I think it seems like a lot of aristocracy, a lot of celebrities, a lot of people who don't necessarily just like let their hair down and just go wild, right? Like you get in the British crowds, and maybe like a Texas crowd in the United States sometimes, and certain crowds, like sometimes in LA and Orange County, if you get if you get the right fighters, you get some wild crowds. Sometimes even in New York City, you get some really good crowds. Philadelphia, you get some great crowds. So depending on the fighters and the fights, you get some of that in the US, but it's very, very subdued. And you see like some of the Japanese cards where it's quiet until somebody throws a punch. Then you hear like a uproar, and then it gets quiet again until the next piece of action. Then you hear something, then it gets quiet again. That's kind of the Japanese thing, right? But Saudi Arabia, it's pretty much more or less quiet throughout the fight. It almost felt like a COVID crowd watching that. But again, I'll give it a pass. It's like 4 something in the morning out there while the fight's taking place. But yeah, Rob, what's going on? Thank you for coming through. What's up? Yeah, the UK arena would have gone crazy over that Mason Noakes fight. But yeah, I want to thank you guys for coming through. I just wanted to give some thoughts and takeaways on this really interesting night of fights. Again, Devin Haney shined against Brian Norman Jr. We'll see how they match make for him going forward. There are all kinds of possibilities there. It could be a 150, it could be a 147. He could even fight Ryan Garcia at a catchweight. By the way, I might do a separate video on this, but to me, it's disgusting that the WBC is apparently giving Ryan Garcia a title shot against Mario Barrios. That is absolutely absurd. It's disgusting. You mean to tell me that the guy who cheated is a proven cheater, and then just went on this racist tirade, right? And he does all this stuff. He just acted a damn fool. And then he comes back and he loses to Raleigh Romero in an undeserved title fight. Let's be honest, super undeserved title fight. Loses that, and then is able to come back to a title fight in a division that he hasn't won a welterweight fight, and he's going to be fighting for his second title in that division. Like, why not just give him a belt? If you want him to have your belt so bad, just put it around his waist already. Like, so there is no justification. Like, for me, Mauricio Suleiman and the WBC should be raked across like seriously, they lose legitimacy. And if the pressure from TKO Boxing, Riyadh season is going to put the clamps on organizations like the WBC for pulling off that type of BS, and we see the WBA do some very, very shady stuff as well, then good riddance. Like, I'm tired of defending these guys. Like, yeah, there's a nostalgia to seeing the green belt. You look throughout the history, you look at 90s, 80s, 70s, and you see the guys with the green belt. And it matters in that regard. But in the way that those organizations are conducting themselves, they deserve to get tossed off the island. You know what I'm saying? Like, they deserve to get to be out of here. They're making the case of their elimination. They're making the case a lot stronger on why we don't need them because of bogus decisions like that. So yeah, giving Ryan Garcia, I get that he's a celebrity. I get that he's like the Justin Bieber of boxing. Okay. But he's coming off a loss, coming off of a steroid suspension prior to that loss. And now he's coming back to another title shot. That's 2 title shots in a row, one being a loss already after the steroids. So yeah, there is no justification for that. Yeah. Ryan definitely wrote them a "I'm really sorry" essay. But Mauricio Sulaiman still has to say, okay, I get allowing him to be ranked in your organization again. I get welcoming him back to the organization, but from a meritocracy standpoint, from a what have you done to deserve the title shot standpoint, there is no justification. So even if you want to say that his rehabilitation, his contrition, all this stuff merits him coming back into the fold, that's different from him getting an actual title shot. Make that part make sense. I haven't heard the sense in that yet. Yeah, I mean, Raleigh could get the fight against Barrios. Pacquiao, if they want to get, I could see, look, Pacquiao in fighting a draw with Barrios is more worthy of a rematch than Ryan Garcia fighting Barrios. You know, if Conor Benn wants to come all the way back down to 147, I think he's more worthy, for sure more worthy of a title shot at 147, even though he's a PED guy too, but more deserving than Ryan Garcia at this point. Ryan Garcia hasn't won since he stopped Oscar Duarte. That's Ryan Garcia's last win. And to me, that's a really good win. And it's a win that's aging well. But still, that's his last win. Since that, he's been no contest, PEDs, and a loss. And now he's getting a second title shot. Crazy. But yeah, I want to thank you guys for coming through. Benjamin Tucker, GW Con YouTube, Mats Edillo, Boxing Wave was in here as well. Thank you for coming through. Rob, thank you. FC, heck yeah, thank you for coming through. And thanks as always, Boxing Wiz, Serge J 007, Bruce Wayne, thank you for coming through. Legendary SS Jackson, QT, JK Beta. Heck yeah, thanks guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the fight. I have to check Hot Facts with Robert Reese. Thank you for coming through. Boxing Fan, thank you. Jitterbug, thank you for coming through. But yeah, I got to look at the schedule. I think it slows down for a week, although I'm sure there's something. And if there is, I'll do the preview on that. But then it's the next week where there's the next significant action. And I think that's the PBC card, if I'm not mistaken. I have to go and look, but I think that might be the Pitbull. You know, let me just take a look really quickly. You know, I actually subscribe to that Dan Rayfield Substack. And so I get Dan Rayfield. It's called Fight Freaks Unite. And I've been a subscriber to that. But every Tuesday, they give you like a very, very comprehensive schedule. And by the way, I haven't looked at the latest. Well, there was the Pro Box TV, but then there was like the Takuma Inoue versus Tenshin Nasukawa, the Japanese up-and-comer who remember Floyd Mayweather had that, just destroyed him in that exhibition. Well, Tenshin Nasukawa, coming from the kickboxing world in Ryzen, is now actually a pretty damn good boxer now. And he was fighting Takuma Inoue. I haven't seen who won that one. I think it was early this morning. But let me see. Today's the 23rd. I just want to give you guys who's going to be fighting. Frazier Clark returns on November 29th in a lower level fight. Erislandy Alvarez, who is probably the most impressive non-heavyweight Olympian that I saw in these last Olympics. Erislandy Alvarez, not Erislandy Lara, not Saul Alvarez, not even Elliot or Storm Alvarez, but Erislandy Alvarez, who was a gold medalist in this last Olympics, is fighting a 10-rounder in Cuba. Keep your eye on him. I wonder if he's going to have a good career. But I'm looking for like big, significant fights. Yeah, so December 6th, that's 2 weeks from now. Isak Pitbull Cruz versus Lamont Rose Jr., Janabek versus Erislandy Lara, Oshaki Foster versus Stephen Fulton, Jesus Ramos versus Shane Mosley Jr., Frank Martin versus Francis Barthélemy. Solid card, but that's the next like big significant action. But yeah, thank you guys once again for coming through on this live chat. I just wanted to jump on with you guys and discuss some of these big takeaways from a really good and entertaining fight card that delivered. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.